Welcome back to Hibiscus Hatcheries. So, haven't done a little bit of a long format for a while. You may wonder why I have a lovely Apuntia next to me. I'm going to go give you a quick lesson. Firstly, I'll introduce Poco. Poco is technically the smallest. Poco means small. I think in Spanish and Italian, she was a little half-egg. She's gorgeous. She's one of my favorites. But one of the big questions today is what we're going to talk about is cohabitation of sexes, of different sexes. If we should have siblings or other tortoises. I'll knock that on the head straight away. Absolutely. We had this experience actually. Ooh. How old are you? You're coming up. Diamond Yana had a clutch mate, well, a hatchling mate called Dakota Sue, and she accidentally we had her inside in an environment inside, and we had a very well-known brand's reptile bowls, and we don't absolutely know. I did find her upside down. It was within about half an hour. It was during breakfast time. But there's lots of little questions people have actually, and I'll try and get into this. So you'll see, I saw something like that there, like the growth on the side there. That's perfect. That's great. So is that. These, who have we got? Tank here. Tank is actually a year older, but I'm pretty sure is either she bromated in the greenhouse for about 6 months the first time she went outside, and she was really reclusive. She had her little hatch mate pass away, and she wasn't able to mingle with other tortoises for another 6 months. It makes her, I don't know if it's just because who she is. But there's lots of things that we can go into in regards to cohabitation and things like that. We have Tank here. He's got a bigger brother who's a month older. They live together, have done for nearly 6 years. No aggression, no piggybacking. Tortoises will climb on top of each other, especially when it's regards to thermoregulating, because it's the nicest, warmest spot. So what happens, much like dogs and things like that, they'll sit in front of each other and get the sun. So there's that sort of stuff. You got to understand the difference between bullying, and that's actively actually attacking them. I don't know if I've still got the footage, but we put Tank and Twinkle out here and in front of old Punga Pants there. Punga's twice their age. He's coming on 14 now. And he, just straight off, he has no issue. He wants to fight with them. He sees them as a rival. It's going to be very different when they're the same size as them, and there's 3 of them. So there'll be these 2 guys and Punga, and yes, we have little gates and so forth. I know you guys find it hilarious how I handle them, and I'm quite relaxed with them. These guys are rock hard. The little tanks, literally little tanks, aren't they, Tank? So even with little Poco here, she's not much bigger than a hatchling or a yearling. But she's hard. She's a little bit flexible, but she's basically hard, and we don't know if she'll get to the full size of a normal Eastern Hermann's, but it'll just probably take a lot longer. And that's our beautiful little pig. She is such a neat tortoise. Tank, so some of them got these beautiful yellow markings on their faces. So, and his father was Fred, so Fred's no longer around. His mother's Daisy. Poco is a Punga Daisy, so these 2 won't be mingling as adults. For simple reason is that they're too closely related. So that's one thing that we will look down the line. So Panga has a completely different bloodline to, so he's a Fred Daisy, and we have 3. Oh, she's just noticed I am flooding the place. Oh, oh crikey. So, this is not what you do with your fancy Bluetooth controller. I should have put it on a timer. So, as you can see, Antonio is floating. So they do float at this age, but it's not good for them. And yes, they can drown. Fortunately, this enclosure will drain out. Actually has holes, but it was very naughty of me. So we've got to do the count. 1, 2, 3. I have 3. So who are we looking for? We have 4 there. We should be having 1 more. And it's going to be, where is she? One of my faves. Phoebe. Ah, Phoebe, she's just hiding in there. So there we go. That was a bit of excitement. So yeah, before I started to do this clip, while I'm here, I might as well. Whew. That was perfect timing. Okay, so this is Phoebe, and when we were talking about Tank and Twinkle, it's so difficult. There's 3 sisters that we have. We have Phoebe, who I believe pretty much looks perfect for what I believe to be a tiny little female tortoise. So she's got a tiny tail, but she's getting that V-ing there. And these will actually go closer together opposed to farther apart, these bits here, these 2 scoots here. So hopefully, pretty much, and just a general shape, more rounder, but anyway, that is Phoebe. I named her. She's a beautiful little tortoise, aren't you, Phoebe? A lot of that yellowing again. So her dad is Panga and her mum's Jilly. We have 3 of those. 2, and that's the big thing, is numbers, especially with girls and boys. The minimum is 1 boy to 2 girls, and that should help. 2 boys in a very confined space is not the greatest idea. As many girls as you like, you won't have an issue. Yeah, from time to time they will look like they're trying to mate each other and stuff like that, and maybe do dominance things, especially around breeding. Same thing. Okay, when we get back to how much calcium should I feed? We technically don't feed these guys any calcium. Best thing you can do is, where the plants are growing, is actually put lime or calcium into the soil there. But we just leave cuttlefish and bone around, and the odd snail shell and things like that, and they will nibble on that themselves and get the calcium when needed, when they want it, not when we just throw it to them every day. And I personally believe that in excessive heat, you're going to get pyramiding. That's why we have these perfectly beautiful tortoises and their shells. These guys are kept inside for 9 months in a humidity of 50%. 50%. We actually have a dehumidifier in there, and dirt with sand in it, so it's dry, because these are Mediterranean tortoises. It's fairly dry. That's why tortoises are tortoises. Nipping and stuff, they're all armor plated. They can handle a lot. When it comes to sulcata, male sulcatas, yeah, they have big, long gular projections that will puncture each other and kill each other. These guys will nip and generally run away from each other. And that's the big reason why you need space. I know they're cute little things at this size, and you know, half the size of my hand. You get about the size of both my hands together, and you need a lot of land, don't you? Because that's just your world is land. It hasn't drained. I'll show you that one. Oh, that was stupid, but at least the water tank be nice and full. And all the lawn over there is going to get a bit of a watering. It won't take too long before it's all drained out, but until then, these beautiful guys are going to be put on the other side. So over here we have down there a section. It's all dry up here and they'll probably stay out of it, but just to make sure that they're all safe and happy. How are you going, Antonia? Nothing dripping out of you? No, so that's a good sign. That's actually the how to test if they've got any fluid in their lungs or anything as well. I'll just tip them upside down. Because tortoises don't have a diaphragm, they can't sneeze. And you might notice in the morning they'll go, man, that's a gorgeous little tortoise. I hardly ever get to look at all of them close up. She's got a split scoot there. That's how I can tell her apart. I love getting these slightly different shells. We breed lots of beautiful, very similar looking tortoises, but it's just those little differences that really get me, and it's really easy to identify you, isn't it, Antonia? Getting your name right is another thing altogether. There you go, there's another beautiful little tortoise. Beautiful colours on you, you're amazing actually. Just to think, I won't comment, we were thinking about trying to rehome you. Well, we've offered you up actually, and nobody's decided to take you, which is not such a bad thing in my books. See, we do throw these quite dark plasterons, which are interesting, and slightly smaller tortoises, but I know we don't have pure westerns here, but there might be a throwback gene. I'm not 100% sure. And nobody is in New Zealand. Whew, holy, don't soak your tortoises. I always say don't. And no, I don't normally soak my tortoises. Anyway, back to it. I don't know what to do. Well, I've saved all your siblings and your future spouses or breeding partners. So I don't personally believe in the idea. It doesn't make any sense for tortoises to be solitary creatures. Absolutely, they're armor plated. They're not super social creatures, but they're not solitary animals, eh? This is the thing that I asked the Aquarian question. They're so damn solitary. Why all, thing is you might think that Punga would be the one sort of pushing in behind or something. No, he's the one in the middle. And then there's Silly Dilly behind him, Daisy, and Margarita, who, completely different species, but they're all huddled together. They can be up there, they can be anywhere else in that cold frame, let alone in the whole garden. And as we know, our mate over there, Zeus, who's having a good munch, he seems to really like human contact, and I think contact for all the other tortoises in this creep. Obviously some are for other reasons, but he doesn't try that on to any of the Hermann's girls, and he doesn't fight with Punga. And really recently, and this is the thing, is there's not been huge amounts of studies on any of this, and with recent studies on redfoots, and most of the studies on redfoots, and that's what we have to be really careful about. So getting back to our Mediterraneans, Easterns are Eastern, Serbia, Turkey, and they range through islands and stuff like that, but it's relatively warm to nice and warm at a peak in summer. And then it goes quite cold down to zero in a lot of places. Some of them it snows. And that's, the understanding of brumation. If you're keeping them inside, I'd sort of suggest don't even bother to conceptualize it. Yes, it's recommended. I don't know. We brumate here naturally. We've had 2 tortoises at least. Zeus hardly brumates. He might brumate for a month. He's essentially North African. I think they come from more altitude places as well. So it's mild here. It doesn't have the same sort of hots and the colds. But he's happy. He does well. Beautiful shell. La-di-da-di-da. Living well. There's some ideas posted that if you don't brumate your tortoises, they won't necessarily live as long because essentially the dormant period stops them from doing anything, growing, for, a third of the year to a quarter of the year. So there's sort of one theory or way of thought that you might be shortening their life. I definitely believe if you're overheating them, and it's like today, I'll show you, today's really overcast. We're getting sometimes into the ideal Ferguson zone, but as yesterday, barely a cloud on the sky. So New Zealand is one of the funny places. We have a massively high UV in the middle of summer. Peak day, we're going 14. That's way over what your solar meter little sticker on the front is. So it's bad for us as humans. So I'm actually underneath a carport here. It's protecting me from UVA and UVB. The tortoises won't need to be exposed to the UV anywhere near as much as other places. We can't control that. They live outside. They can go in and outside of the UV. And that's where it comes to understanding of how much UV. There is no great studies to prove how much UV they need all day, every day. When we indoor keep, we can't control clouds going. So what we do in general, and this is a big recommendation for nearly every species that we keep in the tortoise range, you should start looking at some way of accommodating them outside or in a big area. If you look directly behind me, that is a 5 meter by 2 meter enclosure. It's partitioned directly down the middle, so it's actually 1 meter by 5 meters, or it's in the glass partitions. The tortoises aren't stupid. They will quite happily figure out that they can't go through the glass, but they have options to come out the back door. So they do. Every morning I open up the back door. They all thermoregulate on the hutch end over there and get a wee bit of heat and then come out. But it's like this morning. This morning was overcast, real, not warm. It's getting to the nice sort of warmish temperatures. We're getting up to like 24 degrees during the day. But all 3 Hermanns were out to, straight off the bat, and all the Hermanns were getting out of the hutch pretty bang on when we were leaving to go to school, 8 o'clock, which is fairly early. Like, you got to understand, especially with hatchlings, their motivation is to wake up, wander around a bit, have a drink, and go back to bed. And I've had them for so long, I sort of forget how they are. So a lot of new keepers are, wow, they are quite lazy little creatures, and they are essentially. If you keep them at a good temperature, peaking with natural highs and lows through the day, let it go cold at night. Try not to make the room go much colder than 16 degrees, but don't necessarily heat the inside of the enclosure at night. Just have ultimately your deep heat projection bulb on a timer or thermostat, especially a dimming one, because you'll get those more gradual, not that on full noise. Have your thermostat control set at about 29 degrees because the temperature still will get up. Because in these elements, if it's a ceramic element, not so much in a spotlight, but with a spotlight, the way most people keep them at spotlights, they won't have multiples of them all on a wonderful system going, dimming on and off and dimming off. They'll just have it because they believe it's the cheapest, simplest way to get the right amount of heat and the right amount of UV. UV is getting quite argumentative to what amounts you need all day, every day, blah, blah, blah. And obviously for a third of the year or a quarter of the year, they're getting 0 UV because they are bromating. Underground is what they do. The other thing is, yes, they like to dig. We around here, we train them into going into their hutches and stuff like that. At night, the babies will just go into underneath the plastic log to hide. They don't dig into the real young babies, like straight out hatchlings. They will generally dig down a bit. But yeah, so that's just to knock off another concern for some of these new keepers, and I hope you're all in learning and enjoying, and I'm very grateful for your support. I'm blown away that everybody likes watching it, but we'll try and get you. So Luna, we don't like what I looked at you, I knew you're Diamond Yana, but I say Luna. And this is one thing you gotta be slightly careful with me. I try my hardest to edit it so everybody can understand over the world, but subtitles may not necessarily be correct with my accent. Zeus is over there at the moment. He's swooning old Marigold over there. Marigold hasn't laid any eggs yet that I know of. Sorry, Diamond. Anyway, we'll put Diamond back in the bucket that I have here. So she got quite what I'd classify as depressed if you're talking about humans terms, and when her little friend Dakota Sue passed. So yeah, I'm a big fan. We try and only rehome 2 at a time. We kept Antonia to give Miracle company, and I noticed Miracle got a bit sad when I moved Antonia into with the other juveniles. When you have 8 juveniles ranging between 8 months old to 5 years old, 2 males, the rest females, there has been no bullying or aggression. They're in a 4.5 meter by 2.5 at one end and 1.5 at the other enclosure, all undulating, many areas for them to hide from each other. But you just don't really see any sort of aggression. And in the water dragons recently, I've only just put Smorg. She's never been with her parents or the adults until I've had her in other closures and stuff until this season, and she seems to know who her father is. Well, he's the only man there, but it was Randy, and who her mother is, and they seem to play fight gently with her, not like what they'll do to either Denise from Accounts or Puffy. So that's fascinating in its own sort of thing, how it seems, and like she'll only lie and sit on them. And Folklore too can be quite a tough water dragon, so it's fascinating to see that there must be some type of pheromone or something that they can pick up on, and there is almost a type of kinship or understanding that they are family. So that's quite interesting. That's the fascinating thing. You guys all love the old tortoise, so we'll get your tortoise. Why is there a massive Apuntia sitting right next to me at the moment? It fell over. I cut half of it off because it was getting in my way, but it fell over in the middle of the greenhouse over there, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's actually probably quite a good thing. That's what I was going to do. Quickly teach you how to plant Apuntia. So you just get a piece like this, the old, they called pads. Let it dry up for a few days on the end, on the dry end there. And then literally all you do is, I just put any soil in, but only a good draining soil. They call it succulent and cactus soils and stuff like that. Anyway, plant it about halfway. It'll go, put it in lots of sun. They love the sun. More water, the quicker they're going to grow, basically fill up. Apuntia are brilliant. Apuntia is sort of like the superfood. It's a different level of hydration to sort of drinking in a way. When you get up this morning, when you're going to neurotically soak your tortoise, which is a dry, arid species, thinking you're doing well, the big thing is, yeah, you're loving your tortoise, it's great. but they don't need that type of interference in their life. Just make sure you're not overcooking them with a spotlight. It's probably the greatest recommendation I can do to prevent pyramiding, and you don't need to cover their food with calcium. These sort of things, it's sort of like the solitary tortoise question. These mostly are probably made up by pet store owners and salespeople, which I've been one. I've been one in the most successful pet store in New Zealand. Right, we don't have rescue tortoises. That's one of the ethical reasons why we're happy to breed. Simple fact is that we're boutique, you know the bloodlines, we're not importing, we can't legally import in New Zealand, so to keep the creatures alive in the hobby in New Zealand there has to be breeders, and they're very limited. There's very few in New Zealand, and we're unfortunately having more and more restrictions on our reptile keeping. Water dragons technically you're not allowed to own them anymore in the region I live in. We're allowed to keep them because it's on a grandfather status. Red-head turtles are banned, like they are in a lot of countries. And as I understand, sulcatas, which are an awesome tortoise, but unless you're really prepared, and you almost have to set up life trusts for these creatures and properties in environments that they can live out their life, dig big burrows. So, you know, be very cautious and well educated is what I request on owning these creatures. I don't personally believe it's a great idea to try and keep them inside. I couldn't do it. And it's the same thing with the humidity side of things, especially Mediterraneans. Like, yeah, I understand it if you've got redfoots or cherry heads and things like that. But if you've got a 6-foot table by 2 foot in your house, in your bedroom, and you're keeping it at a humidity, which is not necessary with Cora, you're going to be probably growing spores and stuff in your bedroom or your lounge or living space that technically may be unhealthy for yourself, give you respiratory issues, give you dampness, things like black mold in your house. None of which is necessary. We have a dehumidifier in the shed. It used to actually smell a little bit. That's a brand new build. So I bring the humidity down to in the 50% with the dehumidifier. So much healthier environment for the tortoises and myself. And you just got to sort of keep that in mind. But I'll wrap this up because everything is going to be a half an hour clip. So thanks a lot again. I'm so grateful. Don't forget about what we experienced with Diamond Yana when her little hatch buddy passed away. She got quite insular, almost showed signs of depression. How do I know? How do I know that? The reason I know these things is we live inside their environment. Our house is smack in the middle of our tortoise enclosure. Stand in the lounge, stand in the dining room area. That's our view. Sit watching TV, look out the window, tortoises wandering around. For us, it's perfection. I think for a lot of you guys are amazed and appreciated. But one thing I can tell you, even a 5 meter by 2 meter fully caged enclosure with a little bit of water in the back is not great for at least 6 tortoises. It's probably going to would have been fine for maybe 3 adult Hermanns. Greeks, you just need much bigger. And these, I know they don't. It's only little. But Mark, it's only little. But this will, in this amount of, so 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, and then by the time he's 12, he's going to be twice the size, aren't you, Tank? So, bear in mind, plus they're going to outlive you. All our adult tortoises, or our first creep, I bought from a deceased estate. And yeah, that's the thing in New Zealand. You guys don't probably have concepts that I spent a lot of money, a hell of a lot of money, back over 20 odd years ago for 5 tortoises from a deceased estate, and they may have even reached more if I'd have sold them singly. A lot more than 5 hatchlings, but at the time it was almost impossible to get hatchlings when I was wanting to get tortoises, probably because it was the middle of the year. In saying that, I actually started off, I think, wanting them at the beginning of the hatchling season, but weren't any available. There's a bit more Hermanns available 20 years later, but there's still not a flooded market. You can't necessarily just go and get one here in New Zealand any time of the year. So it's interesting. It's fascinating for anybody who doesn't come from New Zealand. But anyway, goodbye. Have a great day. Very grateful. Thank you so much. All you subscribers, you're cool. You're really cool. I'm stoked. I'm really stoked that you're subscribed. That's the best thing for us. Eventually, all I'm doing is trying to help. I'm trying to give you realistic answers, and well, it's so cool. It is so cool. It's amazing how in little old New Zealand I can broadcast and show you how we keep our tortoises and give you reasonable and good ideas on how to keep them and how we keep them and how lucky we are to have, obviously not the high UV levels that we get of them, but besides that, we're lucky. We're lucky to be able to have 2 species of Mediterranean tortoises, which are pretty much perfect. Besides the breeding of them, we don't really get a subterranean temperature, as I understand, and it was so very rarely that we'll be able to mimic the subterranean temperatures that they need to breed. So that's why I'm always Johnny on the spot, or I try to be. I'm not always, definitely not always, but if I'm Johnny on the spot, that means I can get them into the incubator straight away, and that's my job done. Best chances, and it makes me feel much better about it. But share as much as you can. Just grateful, really, really grateful, and yeah, have a great day. Before I go, I'll show you that it should have all drained away, hopefully. I can't actually see through here, so it was very lucky that I had a look. But yeah, tortoises at younger ages do float, and at older ages I have had the adults. That's why we have the fence around the pond, because I've had them lunar walking on the bottom of the bottom of the pond, and nowadays they can easily climb out of it. There we go, happy days. So as you can see, I've got all the holes down there, along there. It all drains out and relatively quickly, which is good, and they will be all restless and want to go back in. Look at them all tucked over there. This side of the, here we go. Sorry, Twinkle, I'll put you back. You're gonna come racing, aren't you? But there you go. There's 2. There's Twinkle and Antonia. Sorry, and they are side by side, living together. Go to bed every night. No issues. No dominance. No aggression. None of that. Anyway. Have a great day. But yeah, when it comes to keeping tortoises, even though we've had Twinkle and Tank together as a 2, and then Diamond Yana came along as a 3, and then I think it jumped up to 3 to 7 or something like that, and now there's 8. Anyway, have a great day.